Welcome to Grayprimer, a show that's mostly about miniatures. My name is Nick, I'm your host, and this is not my merchandise. On this episode, I'm going to be creating yet another diorama. This time I'm combining two of my favorite parts of the hobby. I got Devastation of Baal by Guy Haley, a phenomenal novel that has a bunch, that's a lot of space bugs coming to attack a lot, but not a bunch, of space vampires on the space vampires' home planet. It is brutal and ferocious, and it's amazing. With number two, my love for the Mcfarlane Space Marine action figures. You know, the big 8-inch gray artist-proof intercessors. Absolutely love them. What happens when Devastation of Baal meets 8-inch action figures? It's gonna be big for a start, but it's also gonna be bloody. So this is your gore trigger warning. Things could get pretty ugly out there. So, let's get some blood for the blood god? Wait, no. Blood for the blood god emperor? Yeah. Skulls for the throne of Terra? Yeah, it all works. Just play the music. Hit it. Most of the ideas I get for custom builds or dioramas come from just idle thoughts that cross my mind, like what would happen if Orks got their hands on a bunch of plans for modern tanks and armored vehicles? What would they do with it? And that turned into the Orks series. I'll put a link in the show notes below. But what do Orks do if they're not at war? Do they hang out at a petrol station? Do they go fishing? Do they go to their races? You know, what does that look like? And at other times, it's just because I mash two kits together and see what comes out the other side, like the Chaos Knight tearing apart that Imperial Guard tank. And I'll link to all those projects and dioramas and everything down below. But for this project, it all starts with a book, and it's The Devastation of Baal by Guy Haley. It's part of the Black Library book series from Games Workshop. This is one of the Warhammer 40,000 books in the Space Marine Conquest series. But none of that matters. All that matters is this. Baal. This is the home planet of the Blood Angels, and this is the last line of defense before Earth. Billions of humans counting on you. There are only 30,000 of the Space Marines, and there are trillions of these bugs coming. It's an epic story. Highly recommended. I love every page of it, and it is just so much fun. So the reason I wanted to use this was because I was looking for ideas to do something with the Mcfarlane Marines, like this big fella here. This is the artist proof from the first series. Really nice action figures, fantastic value for money, lovely and posable. They're just great. You can mess around with them quite a lot. They're nice and robust. They feel like a proper action figure, like from when I was a kid, although they're supersized and pretty chunky, but it doesn't feel like you have to be too careful with them. I think if I got one of those much more expensive Bandai ones, I would be freaking out that I would snap something off it. These are great. And my idea is based around this one up front. I want him to be just completely exhausted, standing at the front of the diorama. He'll maybe have his foot up on the body of a recently killed Genestealer, and I'll have it buried in the mud, at his feet. He'll be covered in soot and blood. There'll be puncture wounds all over his armor. And I'm just going to go to town on destroying this. The diorama is going to be called Survivor of Baal. It's all going to be about this one guy. This is going to be Brother Cadmus, and Cadmus will be the last Marine standing in the diorama anyway. There are a lot of references in the book to give me an idea of how to paint this so that it's accurate to the book. And there's notes I've made here, like impossible to tell who hailed from which chapter. They're so covered in soot and blood that you can't tell their logos on their pauldrons. No plate untouched, bare ceramite, sealant foam, alien blood, all in black. Smeared with soot and blood. So I went through the whole book. I tried to get any references to how these Marines are looking, during and after the battle. And that's what I'm going to base the look on. So let's get going. Let's get Brother Cadmus here into the fight. All right. Bye. Back soon. I'm going to start by showing you just how easy it is to dismantle one of these Mcfarlane action figures, at least most of the way. I've heard that soaking them in warm water beforehand makes this easier, but I'm resorting to brute force and ignorance, and on the whole it seems to work just fine. They're really well made and rarely feel like they're on the verge of breaking when being torn apart like this. They can be kind of adorable too. And this is it, pretty much done, or at least as much as I need it to be. This is the battle damaged helmet. Tyranids don't actually use normal guns, so much of the damage they cause will be scratches, gouges, and tearing. I use a rotary tool with a variety of bits to damage the weapons and armor. I have no idea what all of the rotary tool bits are actually designed to do, so mostly I just experiment until I find the one that works. I also take care to remove mold lines and imperfections before completely shredding all of the components. The lines in Mcfarlane figures can be prominent, but are easily removed. Genestealer claws can cut through ceramite armor like a hot chainsword through a heretic. Just look at that damage. And here I'm giving the Marine an extreme manicure to save painting those fingers. Youch. The ankle armor is hanging on by a wire after a vicious attack, and I secure it with some super glue. The wound to my finger you can see here was caused by the piece of connecting wire, and surprisingly not by any of a dozen razor sharp tools I use daily. I make correctly scaled purity seals to add a few unique touches to this Marine. I sculpt a wax-like seal with a skull motif for the top part, and for the ribbons or parchment I use little bendy ties off bread bags. They work a treat. To speed up the superglue, I use an accelerator spray from AK Interactive. This stuff should be an essential purchase for anyone using superglue. Pro tip, remember to put the lid back on your glue before spraying anything with this. The setting effect is almost instant, and I'm loving the look of these homemade purity seals. They just look great. I'll apply these to the Marine before I prime or paint anything, and again I'll give them a quick spray to set the glue fast. I use another randomly selected tool for the rotary to give the Marine's boots a nice parade shine. And finally, before priming, I give everything a quick brush down to remove any debris or plastic dust. And here are some of the finished parts before they get primed. It feels bad to be damaging something as cool as a Mcfarlane Marine, but not bad enough for me to stop doing it. I'm loving the Aquila bracelet and charm, which will have a red gem when painted. And here is my almost fully painted Marine, and I couldn't be happier. The rifle is colourful, but has subtle wear and tear all over it. And I absolutely adore the green optics tucked away in the scope here. This is an effect I achieved by painting Tamiya clear green over white primer. The carbon residue effect on the muzzle is scale 75 black. What a lovely bit of kit. I still have some iconography to add and some more weathering to do, but he's about 95% complete. The little purity seals can't believe they once kept a loaf of bread fresh back in the day. Damage across the board is mostly deep gouging, and I use grey and stippled silver to give the impression of exposed raw ceramite. I also wanted it to be obvious that Genestealers had done most of this damage, and those filthy four-armed Xenos have no respect for sacred and ancient Space Marine armor. Barely a panel on this power suit has escaped a scratch or a tear. For the eagle-eyed or codex fluent amongst you, you might notice that he is in Blood Drinker's colors rather than Blood Angel's. I figured that having two Blood Angels successor chapters in this diorama would highlight the diversity of the defending forces during the Devastation of Baal. And the other chapter is the criminally misunderstood Knights of Blood, who were once pariahs but are now counted amongst the heroes of Baal. For my Knight of Blood, I only need him from the waist up, and the armor damage will be similar to the Blood Drinker, but is somehow more frenzied looking and even scratchier. I also managed to separate the magazine from the rifle here to give the impression that the Marine ran out of ammo in his final moments. You can see just how frenzied the attack must have been from these panels. The armor is really shredded, and the Marine would have been terrified. Well, that's if he forgot to know no fear at the very end. You can see that the chest armor here has got similar damage to the Blood Drinkers. Maybe a little bit more severe here, but when you look at the helmet, you can see how much worse it was. Like, if he didn't have enough problems, I'd say he'd need a new right eye as soon as this battle's over. But here it is in the torso that you see the most grievous damage to this loyal Knight of Blood. He's lost everything from the hips down in what must have been a brutal attack. Now, most times I can wait until the very end of a diorama build before I need to tidy up my workspace. But for this mammoth build, I had to reset the hobby desk midway through. I was surrounded by way too much stuff and it was slowing me down. I've recently upgraded my hobby desk, and this was a good test of how well I have it organized. Apart from the huge tub of miscellaneous brushes and tools, I feel I did a pretty good job here. And for sure it ends up a lot cleaner and much less likely to result in a cataclysmic null oil spillage or further finger injuries. And with the hobby space reset, it's time to get back to the project. Now I'm marking out the final positions on the XPS foam base and starting to carve into it so that there are specific places for each of the action figures to be glued in. I like to know exactly where each diorama element will be before I start adding texture, paste, or clay. And this is sort of the final checks process before I start applying my light earth diorama gunk from AK Interactive. This stuff feels like gritty, heavy bodied paint, but spreads really easily and has a nice consistent color and texture. It's great stuff and comes in a wide range of colors. I also have to add some visual interest to the base, so I sculpt some rocks out of Daz air drying clay. This clay has a tendency to crack, but that won't make a difference here. Adding some weathering pigments will add color to this very sandy base, and I blend it into the paste with a plastic palette knife. Works really well. I leave the base for a couple of days to completely set before I start adding figures. You can see the hand-painted chapter icons in the pauldrons of the Blood Drinker here. The Knight of Blood is a little too soot-covered to see his chapter icons clearly, which is lucky because I didn't do a great job at painting them. They're okay, but I found the shield shape hard to paint on a curved pauldron. Now to secure the figures into the base, I use slow drying superglue from Ammo by MIG and my old faithful AK Interactive Flash Superglue Accelerator. The slow drying glue gives me extra time to move the figures into exactly the right position, then the accelerator locks it down once it's perfectly seated. The lid from my Redgrass Games wet palette acts as a great blast shield for accelerator overspray. I remember Luke from Geek Gaming saying that he had burned his eyebrows with accelerator spray, so just be careful and keep your distance. So now I'm just going to do some final checks on the Blood Drinker and the Genestealer, as I want his foot to be firmly planted on the Genestealer's chest, and I also want his rifle to be pointed directly at the bug's face. This is a critical set of tweaks, and it will make or break the diorama. I added the Knight's discarded rifle and empty magazine, which was sculpted out of clay, as the one I'd cut off earlier was too short to be convincing. And now it's time to get bloody as I apply blended mixes of coagulated blood and true blood from Green Stuff World with gory red from Vallejo Game Color. GSW's coagulated blood is the best clotted blood effect I've ever seen from a paint. It gives a real sense of the deep injury this Marine has suffered, and it looks stark against the pale sand. So here it is in all its gory glory. On Baal Primus, the Knights of Blood sacrificed themselves to secure the evacuation of the Flesh Terror's chapter. This Blood Drinker arrived on one of those evacuation Thunderhawks and is providing close fire support while the remaining Marines are being taken to safety. Will this unnamed Knight of Blood survive? Who knows? But he lives on here, or at least half of him does, forever watching the moment just before this Genestealer gets a new hole in his head. This diorama was a huge amount of fun to plan, build and paint, and I hope it does Guy Haley's Devastation of Baal some justice. I'll be back in the future with another Mcfarlane Toys diorama, but for now here's one last look at the battle-scorched wastelands of Baal Primus and its superhuman children who protect it with their lives from all things creepy, crawly and chaotic. For the Emperor, for the Angel. Thanks for watching, folks. Please subscribe, like, share, and comment. Until the next time, take care, and bye-bye.